Hi, everyone. Welcome to Food Talk Live. Before we chat with Dr. James Rogers, the founder of Apeel, I want to give some context about food waste and globally. We've all heard these statistics for a long time, but I think they bear repeating. We waste about 1.3 billion tons of food every year around the globe. If food waste were a country, it would be the third largest emitter of greenhouse gases. Food waste often, is a personal thing. We buy too much. We throw food away before it needs to be thrown away. We waste food at restaurants. On the farming side, when farmers don't have a lot of great cold storage techniques or other storage techniques, food is lost in transport. There's also a lot of food left in fields, and that's happening especially right now as COVID sort of takes hold on the global south. Farmers aren't able to get into their fields to harvest things. So there's a lot of ways that food is lost. And what we've seen during COVID is, because of disruptions to supply chains, a lot of food has, been dumped. Milk, we saw sort of at the beginning of COVID being dumped because there was nowhere for it to go. We saw potatoes and other produce being dumped. So this is a problem that, despite all the awareness and research that has been going on for the last 10 or so years, it's still an issue when there's a global shock like COVID-19. And folks like Dana Gunders from ReFed are predicting that we might see more food loss and food waste this year because of COVID-19. But our guest today is a real expert on how to prevent food waste. Again, James Rogers is the founder and CEO of Apeel, a company that creates plant-based coatings that keep produce fresher longer and helps reduce food waste. Rogers holds a doctoral degree in material sciences, started Apeel with grants from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and now counts Oprah and Katy Perry as investors in his company. And I've known James for a little bit now, and watching this company grow and watch him take the global stage, and just to be sort of, be a spectator has been really exciting, because this is truly a revolutionary product that he's created. It's truly helping people around the world, and I'm so excited to have James with us today. Thanks so much for joining me, James.
Yeah, Dana, it's great to be here. Nice to see you in 2D. Too bad it can't be 3D, but it's really great to see you. Thanks for having us on the show.
No, and again, we're so excited. James, we've had the opportunity to talk a lot over the years, but, for our listeners and our viewers to get to know you, one of the things that I like to do is ask everyone sort of the same first question. I like icebreaker questions. I was a Peace Corps volunteer, so lots of icebreakers occurred in my life, right? And so it's an easy one, and it's, what is your favorite food memory? Do you have a favorite memory from childhood?
Oh man, a lot. The first one that came to mind, though, and it's related, I guess, we're digging into some childhood memories here, and maybe now I know how I got into this food waste thing to begin with. But the first thing that came to mind when you said that was, I remember growing up, we weren't allowed to leave the table until we finished our food, and it was the Clean Plate Club, my dad called it, and it was torture at the time. Now we maybe could use a couple more club members, but that was the first one that came to mind. I remember my brother falling asleep in his mashed potatoes, trying to be a member of this club. So that was the first one that comes to mind.
That's amazing. My mom has a similar story where her mom made her just sit at the table for like 10 hours.
Yeah.
So
battle of will. That's a battle of will at that point.
Totally. So I guess my first question to you, and I don't want you to take this the wrong way, but I feel like what you've created is so common sense, right? And it's so useful. Why did it take, you're brilliant, obviously, but why did it take so long for somebody to come up with this and then, make sure that it was used commercially?
Like Dana, just to backing up from that one a second, I think it's the same reason so many things in the world don't exist. you see it and you think that's an obvious answer, and surely someone must be doing that, and you write it off as, oh, well, it's not happening either, it must be impossible, or someone's already doing it.
Yeah.
And because I have to admit, those were my first thoughts with Apeel as well. It was, well, this is obvious. It's either impossible or there's something I don't know that makes it impossible, or someone's already doing this. And I have to admit it took me almost 2 years to formally start the company, because I was convinced that this was too obvious for someone not to be doing already. And it wasn't until years later, and I speak about this all the time, particularly with our interns that come in for the summer. It's like, the world is the way it is because people have either decided to do things or decided not to do things. So, in this one, even and then particular to Apeel, monks in the Middle Ages figured out that you could apply beeswax to apples and they would last a little bit longer into the winter. It's just we often get to an innovation and then we say, well, that's the innovation's done.
Sure.
And so I think with Apeel, it was just us looking at that and going, well, okay, that was the solution we came up with 2,000 years ago. Is there anything we've learned between then and now that we could apply using the same idea and just sharpen it so that we could add, further and further utility. So, I actually, to me, that's the beauty in the solution, is that it seems so obvious. And at one point, I love playing into this even further, because, at one point it was really weird to put your food in a refrigerator.
Right.
At some point it was really, it was like, we're going to bring this box into your home and you're going to put all your food in it and it's going to stay longer. And people were like, whoa, I'm not putting my food in any cold box. What's going on in there? And so I think it's going to be amazing to watch this come full circle, where a solution like Apeel will be just, what we expect. And the refrigeration will start to feel weird again.
Yeah, no, it's really cool. I described it as a plant-based coating at the beginning, and your name, Apeel, sort of implies that it's Apeel. Could you tell folks exactly what this is, and sort of, remember that we all don't have PhDs, right? So if you can explain it to a lay audience.
PhD is a disability in many settings. So, the thing that I find really remarkable is, if you're somewhere you can see outside right now, every surface of a plant is covered with this thin polymeric barrier called cutin. When plants evolved out of water and onto land, the evolutionary adaptation that allowed them to survive outside of the water, so they wouldn't dry out, because when they're in the ocean, they don't need to prevent drying out because they're surrounded by water. But when they get on the land, in order to prevent them from drying out, they needed some sort of protective barrier. And so they evolved this protective barrier around the outside of them. And that evolutionary adaptation was such a huge leap that every single surface of a plant that you see is covered with this protective barrier. And so when we started the business, it was really from a thought experiment. Knew nothing about fruits and vegetables. I was working on solar energy technology during my PhD, and there was this thought experiment where, okay, if you leave a strawberry on the counter and you wait, and you leave a lemon on the counter and you wait, the strawberry melts into a puddle after a couple days, but the lemon lasts for a month. What's going on? They're both food. They're both made of the same materials. And so we thought to ourselves, well, maybe doesn't take a PhD to say, well, maybe there's something about the peel of the lemon that makes it special relative to the peel of the strawberry. And so we zoomed in, and I was shocked to find out that the two surfaces were chemically identical, made of exactly the same building materials, which is where this insight came from, that every plant is protected by this same barrier. And so the next question that we asked was, well, maybe the molecules on the surface of the lemon are arranged differently. Same materials, but maybe they're arranged differently on the surface of the lemon relative to the surface of the strawberry. And I'll spare all the nerdy details in between, but that turns out to be the case, that they're the same materials on the surface, they're just arranged differently. And so that was where the material science background came in to say, okay, how do we get those same materials and how do we mix them up in the liquid so that when they dry, they assemble into an arrangement that more closely resembles the arrangement of the lemon than it does the strawberry. And so that was where the value of the material science training came in to say, oh, if they're both using the same materials, those materials are everywhere. Let's just get those materials and then let's teach this trick to the strawberry, to the cucumber, to the mango, et cetera.
It's really remarkable. And I think one of the things that is so remarkable is you don't have a food background. And what I think about that is that we need more people who don't have backgrounds in food and agriculture to be thinking about these problems that are facing the world, whether it's food loss and food waste or others. And I know you described having a PhD as a disability in some regards. You know, I live with a PhD, and I don't think he'd say that. But I think that, you know, there's a lot to be said for this interdisciplinary work. Not enough of that happens, and I'm wondering if you have thoughts on how we can encourage that more.
Yeah, you know, I feel the same. You know, one of the things that I get taken aback with is, you know, the things when I look around that all I can explain them as are magic happen in nature.
Yeah.
And so this idea that you work in agriculture means that you have, like, you're basically trying to understand everything that grows on the planet, which is an impossible task. Right? Like, it's just like 3.8 billion years worth of evolution, and you study agriculture and you're supposed to understand every single thing that's happening on the planet. You can't. You have to reduce it to kind of generalized principles. And the magic, when you go to the generalized principles, you kind of lose the magic of whatever it was.
Yeah.
And so to me, it's a matter of studying agriculture and studying the food system, but also not being afraid to lose the generalization and zoom in to really, really particular things, because I think it's, you know, only by zooming in on really and focusing on really particular things that you can see behind the curtain, and you see what the magic that's happening, and then hopefully you can take that and extrapolate it to other things. So I agree. You know, if coming in with a fresh set of eyes, I think, is going to be a really valuable skill anywhere. And it just so happens to be that agriculture is and nature is fascinating, and we have a tremendous amount we can learn from this system that's been going through trial and error for 3.8 billion years. You know, talk about innovation. That's an incredible amount of innovation. And so I think if, you know, not just in ag, but anything, you know, that's happening in the natural world, coming at it with, you know, tools from a different discipline, and then just saying, we're just going to really pay attention and see what's going on here, because there's probably some really exciting insight to be found that may have value elsewhere, kind of like this peel of a lemon versus peel of a strawberry. Who knew that there was something to be found there?
Right. It is really cool. And I love this comparison about zooming in, and that's where you find the magic. And I mean, there is so much magic in this work. And when you look at food and agriculture, there's so much to be done. And if we can find those sweet spots, that's where the real difference can be made. So I guess, you know, a lot of our listeners and viewers are probably wondering, but what is it? What is it like? What is it made of? And how does it do this? And does it make things taste different or smell different or feel different?
Yeah. So the answer from a material science, from a science perspective, is lipids. So broadly speaking, there are kind of three big buckets of plant material that compose everything in a plant. So there are carbohydrates, which are like sugars and starches. And then there's proteins, which we're all familiar with, but they're like the machinery that makes things go. And then there's the lipids, which separates everything from each other and keeps everything in its various compartments. So we isolate those lipid materials, the stuff that's creating all the compartmentalization inside of the plant. We isolate those and then we apply those back onto the surface. So we we use the little compartments inside to create the big compartment on the outside, and that's the trick. And and this is where you get into the engineering part. By really precisely figuring out the combinations of those compartment materials, you can slow down the two things that cause food to go bad, which is basically water going out and oxygen going in.
Right.
And if you tune that just right so that you slow down the water going out and you slow down the oxygen going in, you slow down the rate that all of that metabolism is happening inside of the fruit or vegetable. And so it's able to last 2, 3, 4 times longer, even without the use of refrigeration. So when I think about a piece of fruit or a vegetable, I always think about it as it's like a battery of nutrients that are plugged into the tree, which are plugged into the sun.
Okay.
And the sun's energy is basically charging up with nutrition these fruits and vegetables, because evolutionarily the animals that ate these fruits and vegetables had better nutrition, so they survived. So it was in the plant's best interest to transfer that nutrition to the animals that would eat them. The problem is those nutritious molecules have a lot of energy. They're like the charge of the battery. So once you pick them, they start to lose that charge through oxidation, through auto-cannibalization. And so over time, they lose that nutrient density. And so by using Apeel, we can slow down those oxidative processes, we slow down the respiration, and as a result, we don't add more nutrition, but we maintain more of the nutrition that was in the fruit as it was charged up on the tree.
And that nutrient density angle of this, I think, gets lost. We're not just preventing food waste, we're keeping nutrients in by using this. And that's especially important. I mean, I think it's more important now than ever because we need more immune fighting foods in our systems. I mean, COVID has proved that probably more than anything. So this works best on things like apples, avocados. What else, James?
It works that every piece of produce on the planet spoils by the same mechanisms: water going out, oxygen going in. So, we happen to select the avocado because it is the poster child for post-harvest waste. Right? The internet meme with the avocado: not now, not now, not now, now. Wait. And so by creating this little extra peel that allows the avocado to stay ripe for twice as long, we change that experience in people's home. And so you start to say, wow, I normally experience all this waste in my home. And if that wasn't the case, what kind of shopping behaviors might I have now? Maybe instead of buying one avocado, I buy 3 avocados because I know they're good on everything, but I'm nervous about throwing some of them away. And we start to shift some of this abundance into people's homes. Right. And this is now really being accelerated as a result of COVID. In COVID, we saw huge shocks in shopper frequency. Went from something like 2.5 to 3 trips to the store per week down to 1. And so now people are really experiencing this food waste at a greater magnitude than they were previously. And so we've really counted ourselves very fortunate to be able to be a helper in the situation where you're going to the store less frequently and you don't want to throw food away in your home.
Absolutely, yeah. It's a great help to folks, I think, right now. And the taste is good. I mean, because we're friends, I got a great big box of apples at around Christmas time, I think, or the holidays, and they were delicious and they lasted forever. Like my husband and I kind of tested them. We're like, let's see if James has really got this under control. And they tasted delicious for months. It was like amazing.
Yeah, that's what's really fun about this too is, apples are, I think, a really nice example. When you go into the grocery store today, you're confronted with very few choices for types of produce. Yeah. You only find one kind of avocado. It's a Hass avocado. And the counter example to that are apples. Actually, you'll find dozens of apple variety.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the reason for that is if you think of a grower as an investor, well, if I'm going to invest in growing a new variety, if I think about it as an investor, my willingness to invest is what's my probability of success multiplied by what's my total addressable market. And if I grow a new strawberry and that strawberry lasts for one day, my total addressable market is everyone that likes strawberries that lives within one day. But if I grow a strawberry that lasts for 30 days, my total addressable market is everyone that likes strawberries that lives within 30 days.
Yeah.
And so if you think about this in the context of apples, because apples last for like a year, if I invest into a new apple variety, it's everyone that's going to like this flavor of apple that lives within a year, which is basically everyone.
Yeah.
Whereas something like an avocado, it's everyone that's going to like this new avocado and lives within, 15 days, lives within 20 days. It's a much riskier proposition. And so the thing I get really excited about in the apples, that some of the apple varieties that we sent to you are varieties that normally couldn't make it to you because they go bad so quickly. And so we have an opportunity by relaxing perishability to introduce more biodiversity into the food system. So when you go to the grocery store, you shop at grocers that carry Apeel, you're finding and discovering things that you didn't even know existed on this planet, which is like part of the magic to me. It makes it so fun.
Absolutely. And it's like eating that biodiversity that will, help that biodiversity continue. It's when we have monocultures that, these things go away.
And it allows more people to participate in the food system. Yeah. It allows small producers who are growing something really interesting that takes a lot of care and attention. We haven't figured out how to scale it. It's the local producer in your town that grows that variety of strawberry that you wait every year for those 2 weeks that you can pick them up right there, but then they're gone again. It allows those producers to now grow enough produce that they can get broader distribution, make it more economically viable, and have more farmers. We can make farming things an investable endeavor. Same way that you have companies get started and funded. We should have people getting started and funded to grow new varieties of things that are better tasting, more nutritious, and grow better in our local ecosystems.
Absolutely. There's so many wins embedded in that. You're protecting the environment, you're helping small farmers, you're creating more biodiversity that's available to folks. There's nutrient density. It's all of these great things. It's really cool. You talked about, how we might be changing our minds about refrigeration, several years from now. And we're places where the cold chain supply or cold chain infrastructure hasn't really ever gotten to, in places like Sub-Saharan Africa, parts of Latin America, South Asia. What can the impact of this be for farmers in the global South and consumers?
This is probably the thing that I get most excited about. When telephones were introduced into Sub-Saharan Africa, they never installed landline telephones. Right. Went straight to cellular communication, and that's enabled a leapfrogging in infrastructure development that hasn't been witnessed in many places. So, when today we're so reliant on this cold chain infrastructure, the most successful companies right now have been the ones that have invested into that cold chain infrastructure. And so, when we come along and say, we have a solution that nature has figured out that doesn't require that we put fruit in a cold, wet box. We can take this perfect wrapper that nature has designed, that the orange has perfected, and use that to power a food distribution system without the requirement to install refrigerated equipment, to maintain that equipment, to power that equipment. You can start to reimagine a food system that's more participatory, right? Yeah. Today, it's a story of the haves and the have-nots, and the haves is really a function of whether or not you can access refrigerated infrastructure. If you going back to this idea of your addressable market, if you can access refrigerated infrastructure, your distribution radius grows by a factor of 4 instantly. Yeah. If you can't, you're stuck, only being able to access markets that are this close to you. And so, this is probably the part of our work that I'm most excited about is providing a technology that can act as a proxy for refrigerant infrastructure in places of the world that maybe we're not willing to wait that long for that infrastructure to be built. We can accelerate that, and we can leapfrog that market access.
It's really the part that I'm most excited about too. One, because of what you described about it being participatory, but it democratizes so much of what has been under the control of just a few players. And I think that is so exciting. You're going to get more, it's going to be more profitable, as you said before, to be a farmer. You're going to get more young people involved because there's like cool technology. There's all of these, again, wins that are really sort of inherent in what you're doing that I think, that's what's groundbreaking. That's what's going to change the world.
That's what, I think there's a lot of ways. I think our generation is unique in many ways, but one of them has been that because of all the technological development of the past, kind of getting us to where we are, we now have so much technology at our disposal. It's given us a chance to catch our breath, and look around and say, are there things that we should fix right now? Are there things that we're doing that got us to where we are, and we should thank them for getting us to where we are, that we see as potentially not being great for us if we continue doing them that way. And that's really, really tricky, because it's even got a name, right? The innovator's dilemma. It's, we were doing that thing and it got us to here, so obviously we need to keep doing it. But unfortunately, it's actually, you need to flip it on its head and say, we need to thank those technologies for getting us to where we are and giving us the opportunity to take a breath and look around and think, how could we make this better? How could we continue improving? And I always I get so motivated by this idea that we have an opportunity now to refocus on building the bottom of the pyramid, food, shelter, water, so that we can build a system that supports that's able to support more people and our planet. Because the foundation that we're building on now, we've done all of the tricks. We've done everything we can to try to max as many people as we can hold on top of that little foundation. And it's just not going to support a couple more billion people. So the opportunity now is to refocus and use this opportunity while we're out ahead, and say, let's build a foundation so that other things can be built on top of that look after more people, and now look after our planet as well.
Yeah, it's an exciting time. It's a really cool time to be involved in these things. So sort of to change the subject entirely, what's it like to get funding from Oprah and Katy Perry?
It's great. I mean, they see the same future that we do. They see the future of a food system that's measured not on calories, but on nutrition, and is counting more people in than it's counting out. And we're just really fortunate. Both Katy and Oprah are neighbors here in Santa Barbara, so that's how they got involved. I can't think of a place in the world that agriculture, material science, and pop culture intersect so naturally. So just counting ourselves fortunate to have some folks on board as supporters of Apeel that we'll cover the material science side of things, and they can cover the communication side of things.
Yeah, it's amazing that they can help spread the message. I love it. So final question, but before I ask it, I want to make sure people can find out more about you. They can go to apeelsciences.com. They can follow you on Twitter at James Rogers or at Apeel Sciences. Any other websites or handles you want to give out?
Apeel.com.
Great. So what's next, James? Like, what's next? So we're in this, I'm sure, a time of reflection. I know I've been reflecting a lot on how I, think about the food system because of COVID and all those kinds of things. But where do you see the company going now because of all that we've experienced?
Yeah, no, I love the question, Danny. I would back up just and say more macro. I think we're headed into a new age, and I'm really partial to this and biased to this as a material scientist, because when you look back on human history, people have defined the age of human development according to the materials that we've had available to us. So Stone Age, Bronze Age,
Right.
Iron Age, Steel Age, Silicon Age. And I think in retrospect, the age we're in now is going to be called the Plastic Age. And so I get really excited about this idea that we're entering an age of sustainability where we're now using the tools that we've been provided to look into the natural world, to identify the building blocks that nature has been using and reusing and recycling for billions of years.
Yeah.
Use those to create solutions that nature already has the perfect recycling system for.
Right.
So that's where I think we're going. I think Apeel is part of that solution, but I think there are dozens of others that are trying to tip us out of this age of plastics and into this age of sustainability, where actually commercial success and sustainability align.
Yeah.
And if we can do that, right, the system that we're working in is a capitalist system. And so if we can find ways that making the sustainable choice is the lowest cost, then we let the system work for us, and we don't just hope that people do the right thing. We don't hope that people, do the Clean Plate Club. We just make the Clean Plate Club the most economically, friendly way to do things, and it's aligned with the sustainability objectives. And then I think we've built the system appropriately.
That's a great point. And I think companies like yours who have started off with sustainability in mind, if we're going to talk about who comes out on top in this age that you're referring to, the post-plastic age, I've also heard of like the Great Awakening, the Great Reckoning, whatever we call it, it's companies that started off doing the right thing that are going to be the most profitable, the most impactful, the problem solvers. So it's really, really exciting. I'm so glad to talk to you today. Thank you so much for joining me. A reminder that our next episode will be with Chef Barton Seaver, who is also a sustainable seafood expert. James, so great to see you. I applaud all the work you're doing. Thank you.
Danny, great to see you too. Nice to catch up.
Take care. Stay well.